Hello everyone, this is Elias Martin of CollectingJapanesePrints.com. Welcome to Woodblock Wednesday, where every Wednesday we get together and discuss Japanese prints, paintings, history, and culture. Today's Woodblock Wednesday is really going to be more about a conversation with collectors. We're in the middle of Asia Week right now, and the reason why I'm a little late, I usually go live at 3, it's about 3:15 now, is I was bidding on some lots in an auction. And so right now there's a lot of activity for collectors and enthusiasts interested in Asian art. There's, as many of you know, Asia Week is going on in New York City, and there's a lot of auctions and exhibitions and that a lot of the dealers are putting out. And so, you know, I want to talk about a little bit about collecting and about what collectors should keep in mind. I'm noticing a lot of interesting, well, you know, I'm making some observations about what is happening in the market, and I'm also noticing some collectors make some mistakes, some of which I've made myself years ago when I started collecting. And so, you know, I want to talk about that, and then also want to talk about a new book that was recently published that's in my bookstore. That's a very, very, really great read and a valuable resource if you're interested in ukiyo-e. But before we go into our conversation about collecting, I want to thank all of you for joining me in my last seminar. It was this past weekend. It was called Smoldering Plumes and Glowing Embers, Japanese Prints During and After World War II. And, you know, for those of you who are just learning about this, the video has been uploaded onto YouTube along with my other seminars and Woodblock Wednesdays. You could access it by going to my website, CollectingJapanesePrints.com, and it will link you to the video of the seminar. So thank you for joining me. Now, in terms of our conversation today, let me just say that a lot of collectors, number one, I just want to dismiss a fallacy, basically, that everyone thinks is true. Japanese prints, generally speaking, are not rare. They were produced in tens of thousands of impressions. Who knows how many prints were produced from the very beginning, at the dawn of the printmaking in Japan, which was in the 1600s, through the 20th century. They're still making them, and there's hundreds, if not thousands, of artists that produced prints. And those prints were produced in unlimited impressions in some cases, particularly the Edo period prints. And so I want to just say that Japanese prints, just as a general rule, are not rare. You can find a Japanese print pretty easily. You don't even have to go to Japan. Back in the day, you had to take a trip, and of course you could find prints everywhere in Japan, as you can now. But now, all you gotta do is go on Google, look for Japanese prints, and there are auctions year-round dedicated to Japanese prints. Now imagine, how would a business sustain itself for not just a year, but for years, if these prints were not in plentiful supply? They are. Now, a lot of dealers like to sort of not address that because they don't want people to think, well, you know, if you can't get that print, you could always get it later. But that's true. It's true. So I want to encourage all of my clients and my collectors and my friends to do their research first. You certainly use your enthusiasm and your excitement about your area of collecting. Look into the prints that are available, and then do your research. I always encourage people to buy books before they buy prints. And the reason for that is when you open up a book, you could see the body of the work of the artist. So all of these, 98% of the prints that people are interested right now are done by people who are long dead. And unless you're interested in contemporary Japanese prints, and that's another conversation. All of those prints have been produced, and basically you can buy a book, learn about the artist, look at their body of work, and you could decide which designs you like. Why do you like those designs? And then you could research those designs. But because prints are multiples, they're produced in multiple impressions, there's always a chance of finding another impression. In fact, not just a chance. By and large, you'll find another one. And so because that is the case, condition is very important. Impression is very important. If you're dealing, let's say, for example, we're discussing Edo period prints. And let's just pick an example of an artist. So I'm going to pick Hiroshige. Hiroshige produced hundreds of designs. Now, there are some that are very, very important. So, for example, his 100 famous views of Edo. That's a very important series. But, I could pick up other series that are not as important, but there's also some very important designs. Now, those prints were produced in tens of thousands of impressions. And they continued to be produced not through just the Edo period, but through the Meiji period. And so, I was looking at the last Christie sale, and I was looking at some of the prints that were being offered. Some of them were great. Others were okay, and some of them were mediocre. And what I'm noticing is that collectors, in some cases, they prefer to buy at auction and pay 30 to 50% more than they should, because I think partly because they don't trust their eye, and they don't trust themselves yet in some ways. They haven't done the research, and they think, well, if I bid at Christie's, I'll get quality work. That's not the case. That is not the case. And I can pick out several lots, dozens of lots in the last Christie sale where someone overpaid more than twice what they should have paid. And who am I to say what the price is, right? Maybe. But I know the market. I've been following the market for the last 25 years, and I know where these prints come from. And what is happening right now, in my opinion, is there's a slight bubble. And the collectors who are buying at Christie's are newly minted collectors. And as I said, they don't trust their eye. And they don't trust, I don't know why they don't do this, but they should contact a dealer and work with a dealer and get some advice. Now, granted, you can't just call up a dealer and say, hey, what do you think? You got to establish a relationship. And part of that is doing business with the dealer and getting to know the dealer. But at the end of the day, you're going to save a whole lot more money working with a professional than just buying at auction and hoping for the best. So, and there's other landmines with bidding at prints at auction. I noticed that there was a couple of prints in the last auction that looked to my eye that they've been touched up a bit. They've been inpainted. And that's a taboo that most people don't discuss. But the colors and some of the cases of some of the prints didn't look completely natural to my eye. And there's some telltale signs, but it requires time to attune your eye to certain things. And I'm not going to get into that right now. That's a long conversation, and you need examples in front of you to really get the point across. What I can say is that you always want to work with someone that could advise you to let you know what, in fact, you're bidding on. And it's not in the interest of the auction house to disclose all these things. They don't really care. The name Christie's carries a lot of weight. I understand that. They sell, $50, $100 million paintings routinely. I get that. But when it comes to the Japanese prints, they're like anything they're selling, like silver and anything else. They're just putting them up for sale, and they're giving you the bare minimum information, and it's really buyer beware. And so one of the tips that I want to say, it's the most important tip. You always want to ask questions, you always want to do your research, and you always want to contact an expert. And, as I said, in order to contact an expert, you want to have a relationship with an expert and then trust their eye. And at the end of the day, I'll tell you this. This is something I've told a lot of collectors, and advice that I follow myself. Sometimes when you don't win an auction, you win. And what I mean by that is that overpaying for something that is mediocre is not a win. It is not a win, because you'll find another piece. Now, there were some fine pieces also in the sale, and they garnered a lot of money, and you know what? They deserved it. But in a sale like this, you get masterpieces, you get great impressions, and then they're mixed in with a lot of just mediocre stuff, and people confuse that. And collectors, if they're not seasoned collectors, without that, they don't have the experience bidding at auction, overbid and overpay. That's what I really mean. They overpay. And so, yeah. So I just want to leave it at that. So, in the last sale, there were a lot of prints that sold for 2 to 3 times what they should have sold for. And some of them had condition issues that were not disclosed. Now, at the end of the day, those collectors over time will learn. Of course, an education, as one of my mentors would say, an education is a very expensive thing. And so you will learn over the years, but you'll learn by paying too much. And, it's part of my job to share what I know and to help you prevent that. When I first started collecting, I didn't have videos like this at the ready. I really wish I would have met someone early on with this experience, or at least being able to watch these videos and learn from their mistakes. And I want to say, these are mistakes I made myself. I got excited about certain things. I overpaid early on, and those prints are long gone. It's funny. I didn't keep them, and I paid way too much. But at the end of the day, I learned from my mistakes. I learned how to sharpen my eye, and I learned how to buy. And that's really important. Those are all skill sets you need to have in order to build a successful collection. So the other thing I want to point out is that when you're doing your research, you want to learn, again, what prints did the artist produce? And, that way you could figure out which designs you really want. And then you could do research. Are there different states where they produced at different years? Did different publishers print these prints? And if you're dealing with Edo period prints, in some cases the answer is yes. And so you want to know, what does the earliest impressions go for? What are the in-between impressions go for? And what are the late impressions go for? And you want to look at your budget. And I recommend to spend as much as you can on a particular print, because when you invest the right amount of money in the smart way, you'll be rewarded. I'm not saying to go out and spend money on any print at auction. Like I just said, we just mentioned that that's not smart. But when you find something of quality, buying the best will always reward you in the end. And we could be talking about cars, we could be talking about watches or whatever. Anything that's a collectible, particularly Japanese art, particularly art. We could talk about any kind of art. If you want to reap the rewards of your investment in the long term, you want to be able to, first of all, spend as much as you can on quality. And once you get the quality, you will recover your investment and then more. And so as I was saying at the beginning, Japanese prints are not rare. Art isn't rare, and so what makes them rare, or what makes the particular object that you're interested worthwhile, is the quality. And if you have a pristine copy of the iris designed by Hiroshige, you're going to do really well. But if you're going to have one that's an in-between impression or a late impression that's been imprinted, in-painted, well, you got a problem. Down the road. You may not know that now, but down the road you may discover that. So anyway, I just want to point those things out. And at the end of the day, you want to learn as much as you can before you go ahead and spend the big bucks on art. And like I said, always buy books first, learn about what you're interested in, and then you can then make wise decisions on your buying. And of course, that's also going to be rewarding to your collecting. You know, learning more about what you're interested in only enhances your experience of collecting and buying at auction or through a dealer. And so, you know, those are some things I just want to share with all of you. I've mentioned them in the past, but they're worth repeating because I can see this again. I mean, like I said, I was just bidding on some things, and I was looking at the Christie's sale and thinking to myself, wow, you know, some people are going to regret this a year or two from now. And so, anyway, I want to throw that out there. And as I've always mentioned, I'm happy to answer any questions or work with you on anything that might come across as part of your collecting interest. Or if you have any questions about auctions or anything, reach out to me, and I'll be happy to assist. So now the other thing I want to talk to you about today is a book. We usually discuss a print on Woodblock Wednesday, but today I want to discuss a book that just came out. I happen to be one of the exclusive agents selling the book. The book was produced in a very small amount it's a small run, and there were only 100 books produced for sale. So without further ado, let's go to the table and let's see what I have. So I normally have prints to show, but in this case, it's this really handsome book by the esteemed collector, George Mann. And George Mann basically has one, if not the most important private collection of Japanese prints from the ukiyo-e period. And this book doesn't just detail his collection, it handsomely illustrates his collection. It also accounts for his experiences with collecting for the last 60 years. You know, he's known some of the top collectors of the 20th century, and he shares his insights and shares stories about auctions and dinners with them. It's really interesting read. And, you know, let me just kind of flip through. You see how thick that book is? It's actually quite substantial for the it's so much. He added so much to this book, and the images are great. There's photos of him, his family throughout the years. There's photos of him at dinner parties. You see a really beautiful kind of party there at a museum. And, anyway, so I just wanted to point out this really great book. The pictures alone that highlight prints from his collection, as well as other prints from important sources, is worth the price of the book alone. And the book is about the book is $125, and it's worth every penny. In fact, it's an introductory price. As time goes on, the price will go up. And like I said, there were only 100 books produced for sale, you know, and so that's a really small, limited run for a book. And every single image in this book is in color. So, I mean, nothing was left undone in the production of the book. The book is really high quality. And, you know, you'll learn a little bit about that world of collecting at the highest end. And it's kind of fun to read if it's not something you really participate in. But, you know, he shares that with the readers, and there's a lot of insights in here that I think are useful. And George Mann, you know, I'll say one more thing about George Mann and the book, but particularly about the collector. He kind of follows this idea that if you can only collect, you know, 100 or 200 prints and cap yourself at a number, then you have to really search for the best quality in your collecting. And it's an interesting idea. I actually love that idea. I don't necessarily keep that myself for a variety of reasons, But if I was collecting like George, if I was collecting ukiyo-e, I think I would do that. And partly because there isn't tons of material out there, and that is so rare, but also of the quality. So that means there's time for you to save some money, so that you can really buy something when it comes up, because it does come up. But as I said at the beginning of my video, when you're buying quality, that already discounts 80% of what's floating around out there, you know. And I see it all the time with my clients. After 10 or 20 years of collecting, they want to sell their collection, and they don't get back a lot of times what they put into the collection, because they were just buying stuff. And accumulating stuff is not a collection, in my opinion. You want to really be focused on a particular topic, a particular artist, or a genre. And George really focused in on the sort of the history of ukiyo-e, but of the finest quality printings, which this book highlights. So I highly recommend the book. I own the book myself. It's in my library, and I'm happy to offer it to my clients and collectors. As I said, the book is in my bookstore for $125. I recommend you reach out to me and purchase the book before they're gone, because as I said, they were produced in a number of 100 books for sale. And I've already sold a nice chunk of that 100. So if you're interested in buying the book, reach out to me. I'd be happy to assist you, or assist you in any other way. So yeah, that's kind of what I have to discuss with all of you. And so again, you know, if you have any questions about Japanese art, or about what's going on with the market, and the market is kind of crazy right now, and I think that market is crazy in everything. I've noticed other areas of collecting beyond art, the prices are skyrocketing, and there's a lot of issues with well, the economy and all this money floating around, and that's going to bring up prices and inflation and all of that. However, setting that aside, what never changes is the rarest and most, well, the rarest designs in the best quality are always sought after. We could go into a depression, and yet those pieces, the best quality impressions, they will always retain their value, and there will always be someone interested in buying them. So look for something that you love, look out for the best quality impression, and get that. So anyway, I want to thank all of you for joining me on Woodblock Wednesday, and I look forward to seeing you next time when we'll be discussing some print or painting. Until then, I'd look forward to seeing you again. Thanks.